Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Michael and I have just been giggling. If we've both got smiles on our faces, it's because we giggle about time. Every week we begin and we nominate the end time, and every week we go well beyond it. So, yes, yes, we do. Welcome, Michael.
That'll be a shock to some of my viewers that I know, Jackie. I've been hiding it from them, but now you've spilled the beans on me. Anyway, yeah, we're having a little chuckle. It's all good. So yeah, welcome to you, Jackie, and all our listeners. So have you got anything you'd like to share, or will I
No, let's launch in, and
launch
we'll
straight
allow
into
the
it?
material to speak for itself.
Yeah,
I'm sure there'll
yeah,
be lots of opportunity for good discussion.
yeah. I'm sure there will be. All right, Jackie and listeners. So we continue on today with podcast 37, which is part 2 of chapter 18, which, as you might remember, I said I'd cover in four segments. So this is the second part. And the whole chapter is a summary and revision of Krishna's teachings, which fundamentally involves each person renouncing or letting go or surrendering their guna-based egoic desires and beliefs. And that's the whole purpose of this teaching, and it's what we're all in one way or another trying to achieve. And we're doing that so that we can liberate or free ourselves from the bondage of Prakriti, the world of Maya. So that's all the references that everyone's heard of: bondage and liberation, freedom, and so on, imprisonment. This is all about us as individuals, and we can either, in ignorance, keep ourselves imprisoned, Jackie, everyone, through ignorance, and go around in our lives from lifetime to lifetime, pretty much in circles, chasing our tail, so to speak, not really knowing what we're doing. But getting glimpses of pleasure here and there and happiness, and also a bit of sad and sorrow here and there. But we just tend to think, well, that's normal, everyone else is doing it, and this is how life is. But once we eventually we tire of that, as you know, and the being wakes up, and then they start looking at other options. And the only other option is accessing the truth. So the truthful knowledge throughout the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita is what will free any individual from these cycles of birth and death. All right, so that's what the chapters, all the teaching's been about, and this is what chapter 18 is now bringing to a conclusion, and as I say, giving it in a summary form. So following on from last podcast, where Krishna explained the 5 components of action for any individual and elaborated further on how the forces of nature, that is the 3 gunas, sattva, rajas and tamas, interact with or impact any of our physical, mental or emotional actions or works. So we've been discussing a lot lately, haven't we, action. And we're going to look in more detail throughout this whole podcast. Looking at action, the actor, the knowledge behind performing an action, or lack of knowledge, or the amount of knowledge. And it'll all be, every one of these sections, we're going to look at 5 sections, just so everyone sort of can see a bigger picture. And every one of those 5 sections will detail a sattvic aspect to it, a rajasic aspect to it, and a tamasic aspect to it. So we're very strong still in this podcast on the gunas. All right. And those forms of action that I've outlined, well, that's everyone's daily life. Every minute of our life is either physical action, the body doing things, mental action, or emotional action. And so then we look at broader concept as to who's going to be what's going to be the driving force behind those 2 actions being performed. And it can either only be the ego, or it can be your buddhi, your higher self. So it all starts, all this aspect now is bringing it all together, the 18 chapters, Jackie and listeners, and hopefully giving us much more clarity and being able to see a bigger picture rather than chapter by chapter isolated components. All good?
All good.
All right. So he's describing now the breaking the action up into 3 specific components. Main one, of course, being the action itself. second one being the actor or the doer or the performer of the action, and the next one being how much knowledge an individual has got as to how to carry out or perform that action, whether it's mental, emotional, or physical. So what you're saying, if you don't know any of the truth, well, you're not capable of speaking truth. The person who can speak truth, well, they'll be operating at a sattvic level or speaking at a sattvic level, whereas the other ones won't. And we don't have to be totally sattvic or totally this or totally that, but we're talking predominantly. He spells these three out separately, so I'll cover them separately as well in detail, one by one. So he says, thus an action needs an actor who must have the necessary knowledge to carry out and execute the task. All actors or doers, which include everyone referred to here, perform all their activities under any of their three basic natures, as I say, sattva, rajas, and tamas. All right, so anything with what I've said so far, Jackie, that you want to comment on, or are you okay?
I'm okay. Just one small thought crossed my mind, which was there's an in-between stage, isn't there, which is within ourselves. Sometimes we actually know the right thing to do, but we let the lower self win. And sometimes we either say something we know we shouldn't, or we eat something we know we shouldn't, or we do something we know we shouldn't, because we're
Yeah,
either too lazy or, whatever the reasoning is. Sometimes we know better than what it is we do.
yeah. Well, that's part of the learning process. There's no big problem with that. It's in a way a positive because you just speaking about it in the way you have means that you're clearly aware of it. So the clarity and awareness of it is the biggest issue that anyone needs to have at the beginning. If they haven't got that, well, it stops and starts there. So it starts and stops there, Jackie. So having that, you now start what you're saying and what nearly everyone that's listening is saying as well, is that you then look more closely as to why did you say what you shouldn't have? Why did it come out? And you know that it was something to do with the egoic and the rajasic aspect of you. You either wanted to have a dig at the other person, you wanted to get something from the other person, whatever it might be. There's a million sort of examples. Um, but that's what keeps, I'm going to talk about the force behind the action. After we do these three, there's conviction, and then there's the force, if you like. So that forces the individual to start making alterations. You have the little regret. You think, well, I didn't really want to say that or do that. Yeah. I was being a bit mischievous, or this devious, or whatever it was. It's not the end of the world. You don't get hung for it or put in jail, but it irritates the being because you're wanting naturally to operate from your highest self. And so you say, well, why did I stop operating then? And that gives you a stronger resolve, doesn't it? And clarity as to next time you're in that situation, that'll be sort of further in your mind or front of your mind, and you'll be more careful and not let it slip under your guard, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yeah, very good.
Yeah. Okay. So Krishna now spells out to Arjuna in detail how these three gunas play out in the three aspects of knowledge, actions, and doers or actors. So he mentions quickly again, sattva being the highest quality, reflecting purity and serenity, poise and maturity. So in the example you just gave, you lowered your little aspect of purity and serenity and poise and maturity and dropped down slightly. Not, as I say, not the end of the world, but you're aware of it, and that's fantastic. And that means you're going to be more determined for that to happen. Rajas manifests as desires, passion, full of activity and agitation. There would have been any of that behind why that happened. And then tamas, the lowest energy or mood, reflects as lethargy, heedlessness, and indifference. And this is the whole basis of Prakriti, everyone, the whole creation, these three energies. But that's why they're so fundamentally important to understand. They're the driving force behind everything in the creation, the moon, the stars, the planets, tides, all the animals, all the birds, all the fishes in the oceans, and they're the driving force behind every human being. But how many people understand this, Jackie? Yeah. Yeah, you know a lot of people, you've met a lot of people, all the people listening, how many do you know? We're learning, we're trying to understand it. Most of the world's not doing that. So you're not going to get very far until you get this fundamental information. And everyone will eventually, but it's going to take a number of lifetimes. These energies, of course, are the moods or the threads that bind and play out as follows now in these three areas. So the first one I'll cover is knowledge. All right. And he says Krishna says, the person of sattvic knowledge, learned from the great sages and masters, knows the self, sees the self in unity in all beings, and sees no separateness. That's pure knowledge. So we're taking away that aspect of I, me, and mine. You're sort of broadening it out to the whole creation. The person of Rajasika knowledge coming from passion, sees everything in existence as separate, including himself. So there's you, there's your husband, there's your children, there's your work colleagues, there's the Prime Minister, there's this and there's that. Every individual separate, and that's okay. They are all separate in one way, but there's also a bigger picture where or most people listening to this podcast would understand that all human beings equal in the eyes of God, made in God's image. It's how they're acting and speaking and behaving. That's a fundamental difference in the people, and that's driven by their guna balance. And then he says that the Tamasika person clings blindly to any idea without any logic, truth, or insight. That has its origin in the darkness of ignorance. I just wrote quickly in there as I was writing the notes. Jesus talks about people, and he says there's none so blind as those who will not see, and none so deaf as those who will not hear. So I can say this or try to say it to people, but they'll close their ears. They don't want to hear it. So the person obviously has to wake up, and then once you wake up, well, you start opening yourself up. Wake up and open up really are the same thing. And so in like manner, similar way, similar process, Krishna now explains to Arjuna, which is us, action, the action itself. He says persons performing sattvic actions do so according to the scriptures without any attachment, seeking no fruit or reward. They see their actions being performed as a duty. And I touched on that last podcast, Jackie. That means really that's the true meaning of being in the now, in the present. There is no drudgery in sattvika work. Time flies. You'll find, people who engage in it and observe it, that if you're fully engaged, you can do something for a couple of hours and say, oh, gee, I thought it was half an hour and 2 hours have gone by. Whereas if you're not liking it, if you don't want to be doing, if there's a dislike for it, every minute seems like an eternity. Oh, no. Oh, geez, I've only been doing it 5 minutes. It feels like 5 hours. Yeah. So that's the difference. That's just a simple little example. So there's no drudgery in sattvic work, no likes or dislikes. It's just pure. Needs to be done. You do it the best you can. Persons performing rajasic actions full of vanity seek to gratify their desires. Now, by the seeking, driving force of a desire, there's going to be a huge amount of effort. Hurry, quick, do this, get that done. I want to get over there and, then I've got to do this. Go all the time. Things get half done. You drop things in the meantime, spill things, make more work for yourself. All of those sorts of things happen when the beings that's most Rajasic. You can still be Rajasic on a sort of a bit of a calmer level than that, but it's still full of go. Rajasic work entangles one in self-indulgent pursuits and requires an inordinate amount of egoistic effort. This type of action hinders one's spiritual growth and yields a lot of pain and sorrow. We think we're accomplishing, we're happy when to some extent or other, but there's been a fair bit of aches and pains or heartache or whatever it might be along the way to get it. And then, of course, the tamasic persons performing tamasic actions do so blinded by delusion. No consideration is given to the consequences that follow. Also, the doer has no notion of their capacity to accomplish it. So a lot of these people start things, Jackie, and they only get caught away through or halfway and just abandon it. It doesn't matter what it is. They haven't got the perseverance and the conviction and so on to continue. They're not criminals, most of them, or anything like that. And criminals can be in Rajasic ones as well, seldom in Sattvika. Well, if they are, well, they're not Sattvic. But it's just a lifestyle. And I've mentioned before, not in, there's no disrespect or whatever in these comments. It's simply the newest, younger souls haven't had many lifetimes experience, so they've just got lots of lifetimes ahead of them where there'll be a lot of pain and suffering, but that's how you grow. It's through the pain and suffering that the being changes their habits and their ideas and their beliefs and so on. So they move up into a Rajasic state for many lifetimes, and the Rajasic ones are moving up into a Sattvic state. No one can go from Rajas to Sattva because it's too big a gap. There has to be that continuum
from
learning.
Tamas to Sattva.
Yeah, sorry,
Yes.
what did I say?
Yeah, Rajas to Sattva.
Oh, all right, yeah, from Tamas to Sattva. So thank you. So that's the section on action. So we've looked at the actor. The knowledge first. Now we've looked at action, and the third one, Krishna now outlines the actor or the doers. He says the Sattvic actor, free of ego. Everyone Sattvic is free from ego. Yeah. And even if you're not in there all the time, whenever you perform the act, a Sattvic act or thought, it's pure. Yeah, even if the person's in early stages of sort of using sattva, if it's used, well, it's pure. It's the extent or the amount and the duration of it that makes it whether the person's predominantly a sattvic being or just flits in and out. And then you flit longer in and less out, and then again longer in and less out. So that's the process. It's just everything's a slow part of this huge transmigration, if you like, from a mortal being to a divine being. Takes many, many lifetimes. So he says the Sattvic actor is free of ego, confident and courageous, caring not whether he succeeds or fails, seeing himself as a mere instrument of divinity, and then his actions arise from purity. So if you've got the best of intentions, Jackie, to help an old lady across the road, busy intersection or something like that, you or anyone, but through totally unforeseen circumstances, a truck comes hurtling around a corner unexpectedly and kills the old lady or whoever, that doesn't karmically count against the being that's trying to help. They had the best of intentions. They were careful and mindful in that, but unforeseen circumstances brought some tragic event around. So that's the reference there, that whether the being succeeds or fails isn't the critical thing. It's whether you're trying to perform it in the Sattvic action or to the best of your ability. Because we can't always, everything we do and try to achieve, we don't always achieve it, do we? Yeah, sometimes you can try all your life and keep trying. Other times you might do it for a few years and say, no, this isn't working out. I'm not cut out for this, or whatever it might be. And you give it away, and you embark on something else. So, so this is just simply saying that you can be operating from sattva, do it before being an actor, a sattvic actor, but things can go wrong for whatever reason. The rajasic doer is impulsive, greedy, looking for reward, violent, impure, torn between joy and sorrow. In him, passion is predominant. Now, not everyone that's rajasic is say violent, but a lot of people in there are. Because if you get in a rajasic person's way when they're wanting to achieve something, even a wife or a girlfriend or something, and some other person steps in and they feel that they're going to take them away from them, well, can get very violent, even kill the person involved or the two people involved. But they're sort of extreme examples. But in amongst it all is just that's how the rajasic actor carries out their actions. Always in a hurry, always got a strong desire driving it, and always got a definite reward or fruit of action at the end of it. This is why I'm doing it. I'm desperate to get that or avoid that. It's both positive and negative. And the tamasic actor, it says these are overzealous and even harmful to those who get in their way. Spiritual achievement is not for these doers. That's the rajasic ones. And the tamasic actors, having no firm purpose in life, who are lazy, inattentive, unconcerned, low-minded, despondent, deceitful, malicious, dishonest, and procrastinating, I should say, are in darkness. So there's a lot there, Jackie, but just a couple of things before I'll pass over to you. But everyone will be familiar with Shakespeare. And in one of his works, he makes the beautiful reference where he says, the whole world's a stage and we're all mere actors on it, playing our parts. You're aware of that, Jackie? And I'm sure nearly everyone listening would be as well. So what Shakespeare's referring to is this here. The whole world's a stage. We're all actors, 8 billion people. This is a big stage, the whole globe. He says the whole world is a stage. So 8 billion people on it are all playing, are actors, all doing things, saying things. So in any film, in any book, anything, anywhere around the world, there's people crying, there's people killing, there's people loving, having an affair. There's rulers, there's leaders of the world, there's armies being organised and all sorts of stuff. It's all happening all over the world. Everyone's an actor and everyone's performing an action and everyone's performing with the guna that's their driving force. For the person who wants to be the richest person in the world, that's all that matters. Just the money. The one who wants to rule the world, power. That's all that matters. I just want the power to run this world, run this country, even just run a family. Lots of families have power struggles. Relationships, just two people, and it can be a power struggle. So so that's Shakespeare's reference to it. But you also very early in the piece, I remember saying about you recognise the whole creation, Jackie, as a tapestry, and you recognised how each individual does their own little tapestry. We called it Me and My Life, if you remember. And so on that big, you remember saying that early in the piece?
Vaguely. I can't remember what point I was trying to get at, so I'm hoping you recall that. But anyway,
well, it
continue.
doesn't matter. I don't particularly recall, but you were sort of in one way or another making the reference to that there's a big picture where like the whole creation is like a tapestry was probably the way you were describing it. And I might have added onto it, well, God puts into that tapestry space and time and, all the planets and stars and animals and birds and everything like that. But then in that tapestry down the bottom, there's 8 billion little squares. And Jackie and her tapestry of Me and My Life is in there, woven. and it's got your husband in it and your 3 children and your parents in there, and your cat or your dog or whatever, um, and your work colleagues and the job you do and teaching yoga. And I've got my little square in there, Michael, and his life. And so and these days people are videoing all of this. As soon as a baby's born, the parents are videoing it, and then videoing when they go to school. And prior to that, we just had photos. You took a photo when there was a baby, you took a photo when they started school, you took a photo when they graduated, you took a photo when they got married. You hold up all the photos when there's a funeral. And it sort of shows the progress through the person's life. People write books about biographies of people. Some write their own autobiography. This whole world's a stage is all I'm referring to. The tapestry of life, sometimes it's called. And Jesus also comes in on this, and he says, by their actions you shall judge them. It's very misunderstood. And these days, of course, in the Western world, particularly with the woke people, to use the word judging is almost like a death sentence, or deserves a death sentence. That's not meaning that person shouldn't be wearing that dress because it doesn't go with their complexion or something like that. When Jesus says, by their actions you shall judge them, he's saying, listen to what the person's saying, watch what actions they're performing and how they're performing them, and that'll tell you what guna balance that they're operating from. You'll be able to observe and determine that they're basically a sattvika being, or a rajasika being, or a tamasika being, and that'll help you understand how to deal with them, how to interact with them, so it'll be for the mutual benefit of both people. And you were going to say something there, Jack. You were.
Yeah. I mean, it might just be me. I mean, I would think that most people would understand that, but maybe I'm incorrect there. Um, I, I was just thinking recently, someone said something to me which surprised me, because in life, I'm always looking at what people do. I think I just grew up doing that, watching what people would do and allowing that to inform me as to what kind of person they must be to do such a thing. Assessment is another word we could use here instead of judgment, which is
Yes.
perhaps a
Yeah.
little less loaded
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
some, but
Yeah.
but I don't have any problem with that word at all. But I'm just thinking back to talking with a friend recently, and the friend said something to me along the lines of, I'm always shocked when people say they're going to do something, but then they either don't do it or they do something else entirely. It always shocks me, because if they said they were going to do it a particular way, why didn't they do it a particular way? And I remember just thinking, oh, that's odd. I take less notice of what people say and I spend more time watching what they do, because watching what they do will give me far more insight into their character than the words that they say. So I suppose we are all different in some ways in terms of how we do that, but I've just always observed people, maybe because I've been like a born observer, really, for as long as I can remember. Even as a small child, I watched people. I'm always curious in the doing and what that says about a person.
Yeah. Well, the other person's being very observant too. They're just using a different one of the 5 senses, um, or focusing. You say you're focusing on what the person does. So that's more or less eyesight. She's focusing on what they're saying, so she's using hearing, but she'd be able to discern pretty much the same as you can through your watching. And in actual fact, if you think about it, you'd be doing basically all of them to some extent or other. Like, even if you're sitting in a tram or a train or something, and the person next to you hasn't had a shower or bath for 3 months, your sense of smell would make the observation. I think this person's not very hygienic and hasn't washed for a long time. Now, we're not talking about what the circumstances are, that they're homeless and they live under a bridge and they can't get to a shower or things like that. But we're just talking about the observation so that one would come through smell. Others it's more through hearing, others more through Yeah. But Jesus says, by their actions you shall judge them. Well, he's meaning whichever way that it applies. So there's no right or wrong, or one's better, or, again, different people are more finely tuned in with eyesight, seeing things. Others are more finely tuned with hearing. They pick up, when people are talking, the tones and the dishonesty behind the words that the person's trying to put across. Other people, you in your reference, you'd be able to sort of see it, the look, the body language, the facial expressions, things like that. So yeah, it's all multifaceted, but it's a beautiful comment he makes, which a lot of people from that I've picked up don't understand what he truly means, or what's truly meant by that. So whether you take it through what Krishna is saying, which I've just outlined in so far in this segment, or whether you take it Shakespeare's interpretation of it, which is perfectly ties in, as I would understand. He was a brilliant philosopher, and a very spiritual one at that. Your observation with the tapestry in the broadest, in that sort of sense, and Jesus's comment there sort of fits in with it as well. And there'll be plenty of others in other works as well, but they were just three that sort of came to mind as I was putting it together. So I'll continue on, Jackie. So in similar fashion, Krishna there describes how the three gunas impact on the individual's qualities of intellect or buddhi, or conviction or firmness of mind. So I mentioned earlier on about the three, the action, the knowledge to perform the action, and the actor. And now these two don't come under exactly that sort of neat category, but they're vital components of it. So that's the what's driving the being. And it's either the intellect, as I mentioned earlier on, the buddhi, or it'll be ego. So if it's not buddhi, ego's driving your chariot, got hold of the reins of your chariot. And then conviction, that's your firmness of mind. So when you're saying with this lady, she says, oh, I'm amazed at how many people start something and can't finish it, or don't finish it. Well, that's this part that that I'll be discussing, conviction. So intellect refers to the faculty of discrimination. That's our buddhi. Buddhi, for everyone, Jackie, is the only organ that's referred to as an organ. It's the only organ in the being that can discriminate between true and untrue. That's the ultimate discrimination. So whatever, it's either true or it's not true. And if the being can't discriminate between those two, well, they're going to fall into the realms of rajasic people and tamasic people. Okay, and I'll spell that out in detail, the same as I have in those other three aspects. And he says conviction now, he says, refers to strength, resolve, fortitude, and courage that one that's on the spiritual path has to use to keep bringing about the changes of how they act, and being the actor and the driving force behind it, and all of that. Is that pretty clear, Jackie?
It is.
All right. Well, I'll launch into covering those last two, and we're done and dusted. So the intellect, the sattvic intellect, buddhi, which understands the creation and dissolution of life, what action should be done and what not, which discriminate between fear and fearlessness, bondage and liberation, which differentiates between truth and non-truth, real and not real, that sattvika intellect leads one Godward. So you can't get it any clearer or plainer than that, can you, Jackie? Then he talks about the rajasic intellect. It's shrouded in ignorance, has a distorted understanding of right and wrong, and rationalizes that the means justify the ends, no matter how selfish or hurtful. So it's sort of swinging backwards and forwards all the time, the Rajasic mind and the Rajasic being. 1 minute they're operating at a finer level, next minute they can drop down pretty quickly into something quite obnoxious. So this Rajasic intellect, shrouded in ignorance, has a distorted understanding. Greed, passion, anger, and fear cloud. It's always the same words keep cropping up in all the different aspects that we've covered. Lazy, indolent for the Tamasic, pure and according to the divine laws and scriptures and so on for the Sattvic. So he says, cloud its vision. It stays mired in base worldly life instead of guiding one upwards. So this is what keeps the bulk of the people, majority of people are basically Rajasic, Jackie, by nature. And so they just continuously go through these life cycles, life cycle after life cycle, all of them much the same. Focus on red one lifetime, green the next one, purple the next one. So the changes that, yeah. Then you go into shapes, and so one lifetime's more triangular, the next one's rectangular, next one's circular. And so you're just changing the shapes or the colours or whatever, but nothing fundamental. And not until you tire of all of that, listeners, will you want to, so that way you're going pretty much horizontal all the time. A little bit up, a little bit down, lifetime, little bit up, little bit down. But when you wake up, well, then your trajectory is like a plane taking off. It leaves the tarmac and it starts heading upward. And then the Tamasic Buddhi, wrapped in ignorance and enveloped in darkness, simply cannot discriminate at all. Tamasic people can't discriminate. To them, goodness appears bad and evil appears good. That's how fundamental it is, Jackie, for Tamasic people. Yeah, when we look at TV and we see some of these people, you say, what sort of person would do that or say that or act like that? Well, it's a Tamasic sort of person. You can almost hardly blame them because they're operating from such darkness that they just got no, anyway, that's they see everything in a perverted way their whole life, and it drags them forever downwards. So these people mentioned in one of the earlier podcasts run the risk eventually, if they don't start pulling themselves up a little bit into moving back up towards Rajas, it will actually disappear off the scene in that sense. So Krishna continues now with this is the last bit, Jackie and listeners, a conviction or steadfastness or firmness of mind. So we've looked at the action, the actor, the knowledge behind the action. We've looked at now the intellect or the ego behind it, and now we're looking at the conviction, the driving force, the strength, the power. So sattvic conviction, an absolute unswavering devotion. I'm trying to work out how to say it. Got myself mucked up there, but not wavering, folk. An absolute unwavering is what I'm trying to say. Devotion to the Lord. So if our attentions, in chapter 9, it was fix thy mind on me, devote thyself to me, surrender to me. Well, when you got that sort of devotion, there's no wavering, there's no deviation. You just want to be doing everything in the image of God, or the way you understand God would like you to be acting or speaking. So it says steady concentration, senses firmly controlled, your prana, your life force, vitality and energy turned Godward. This focus on the divine never veers from the ultimate goal of unity. Beautiful, uplifting sentiments, aren't they, Jackie? Yeah, we'd all aspire for that. We do all aspire for that. I know, everyone listening. So our job is, now that you understand it more clearly, everyone, through the teachings of over the 18 chapters, 40 podcasts, the job for everyone in the rest of your life is to aim for that, be more unwavering, more senses controlled, more firm, more courageous, more conviction, all of those qualities. They're necessary in any walk of life or any aspect of life anyway, for success. Yeah. But particularly in the area of on your spiritual journey, of course, the ultimate aspect of life. He says rajasic firmness of mind, these always turns to wealth, power, pomp, property, and so on. And being directed to worldly enjoyment condemns one to a repeated lifetimes of turmoil and pain and suffering. In amongst it, there's some joy and fleeting happiness, but it's not true happiness, so it doesn't really amount to very much. And of course, the poor domestic steadfastness, they just cling perversely to false ideas, fear, grief, despair, vanity, and lack of purpose and fortitude, and that results in deadly inertia for them. Most of them can't even start anything, let alone give up a quarter way into it or halfway into it or something like that. But even rajasic people who are usually full of go, many of them can't finish tasks either. And even in offices or things like that, it's not just physical tasks, Jackie. You've come across in work situations where people are given a task, complete this topic or whatever for the group meeting at the end of the week, and they can't do it. I didn't feel well the day before, or I've had a busy week, or this or that. But others will push through hell or shine, or whatever it's called, rain or shine, and would get it done. Yes, so that's just the different amount of input that the person has. And so in the absence of discrimination, the tamasic person simply eats, drinks and sleeps one's time away, ignoring their life as if it were a dream. And that's what they're really doing. They're just dreaming their life away. So I'll just leave the listeners with the exercise, Jackie, for those that would like to do an exercise. I'd just like you to ponder and ask yourself, folk, very simple one this week. Do you feel you could sharpen your buddhi and your conviction, the two last factors that I've outlined in this discussion, that you would want to operate more and more from your buddhi, your organ of discrimination, so less and less of the egoic mind and emotions? And do you think that you could maybe put a bit more oomph into everything you're doing, the studies, the reading, the meditation, putting these teachings into practice is where you'd put the most focus, I guess, on changing. So that's your little exercise for those that like doing exercises. Homework's up, I used to call it when I was a teacher. But big people are scared of the word homework, so you have to say exercise or activity.
I don't think we're scared of it, but yes, exercise or activity sounds good. It was interesting, just as you were talking and summing up there, I was just thinking it really comes back, and this is what your exercise revolves around, it comes back to knowing ourselves deeply and truly inside, understanding the different kind of guna balance from which we're operating at any point, and then living life with as much conviction and doing always what we know to be true and correct, even if that takes more effort. Like really, if you wanted to synthesize all of this teaching down, if people just practice those things regularly, day in, day out, we would all see beautiful improvements in our lives.
Well, you've summed up the whole 18 chapters in 2 sentences there, Jackie. Beautifully done. If I could have done that, I would have just said in first podcast. Well, here's the 40 podcasts rolled into one. Beautiful words and 100% correct. Yeah, and I've said a couple of times in these podcasts, and I say it a lot to the group, people in the groups. If every person on the planet just tried to be 1% better in everything they say and think and do each day, there'd be a massive transformation across the globe.
Yes, our world would be a different place.
Just 1%. So, but everyone listening is doing more than that. Trying very, and these aspects, the knowledge and your firmness of conviction and all of that, your understanding of the gunas, you're all wanting to operate from Sattva. I know that. I'm sure of that. It's just a matter of fine-tuning it, just making it more constant. That's all. So good luck with it. I'm sure you will succeed eventually, and are succeeding as we go. So the homework is just to sort of maybe push you along a little bit.
Beautiful. Well,
All right,
thank
Jackie,
you.
I'm
Another
done.
fabulous conversation. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. And we will all see each other next week.
Yep.
All
Okay.
right.
Bye. Bye,
see,
everyone.
see you later, everyone.